We are recording this, and thank you all for being here. And I'm excited for today.
Perfect. So today is a kind of a part 1 of 2. And so today we're going to be doing the do's and don'ts of piano tuning from the things that I've learned over the years. And then tomorrow we're actually going to be doing more of a show and tell and get some actual feedback. So just so you all know, if you can get access to a piano, if we can have you, get a mic, get a stand of some kind, so we can actually look at posture, and I can be like, hey Robert, move your elbow up a little bit. Hey Janice, go ahead and strike the key a little bit harder is what I'd recommend. We're going to go through that. And so if you can get access to a piano and to do some, get a little bravery, and we can do it together. There's no judgment, but this is one of those we're going to be doing tomorrow, the first time where we're actually doing some kind of real training for you all. So I'm excited about that, but figure today might be a good one to do some of the do's and don'ts.
So we're meeting tomorrow too?
Say it again. Yeah, we're going to be doing, because we missed Monday just due to I was traveling. So we really do want to stick to 3 days a week. We believe that having that touch point 3 days a week is important for the growth of everybody. And so even in days where we miss one day, we try to double up on it or get it going for the rest of the week.
Okay, that's the first I've heard of it. I didn't know if you'd sent an email out or not, but I didn't get one. So.
Oh, this is now stuff that you're going to do. And by the way, at the end of this, we're going to send you, or we're going to put in the chat, a link to our Facebook kind of temporary Facebook page for this group, to kind of, there'll be more, lives and videos in there for you all to kind of come back to. The first thing that I want to talk about, and this happened literally the other day or a couple weeks ago, and that is, be sure to charge your ETD. Because when that happens and you get to the customer's house and your device is dead or out of batteries and you don't have your cord, I mean, right now I'm down to 17% on this guy. So that's a big one. Do remember, and then kind of tagging along with this is, do remember the important tools. Again, I went to a tuning and it was that my ETD was not charged, and I didn't have my tuning hammer in my kit. So I literally couldn't do anything. And I don't know why it wasn't in the kit, but that happens fairly regularly. It's like, oh, you're cleaning something, you're doing something. So always remember to put your tuning kit just so that it's right there, but also charge your ETD. I've been thinking about this one, Robert, a little bit more because I know that you've mentioned this, stretches. And I did a tuning the other day and I didn't do any kind of stretching at all. And I was sore for the rest of the day. So I kind of went into doing some more stretching before I do a tuning, and it has helped. And so I would recommend do your stretches in the morning, the day of, and just really, again, you want to get this back kind of stretched out, your tuning shoulder. So doing this kind of a thing, and it's been in my left lower back. And so again, it was a grand, I was sitting down, but I was using a lot of muscles there. So I do recommend the stretching. So that's a definite do, especially as we get older. I think I started when I was 15 and you don't need to stretch. And so I don't think I ever did anything like that. But now as I'm 40, I think it's a good idea. And so that's a big one. The next one I wanted to show you is brace your finger. And so that will be in your test blows. Because you're going to be tuning thousands of pianos in your career. And you don't want to battle that arthritis. You want to go ahead and have this braced just like this. And I know that a lot of people start with just kind of the finger, but I've always done it this way. You're bracing your middle finger, which is your striking finger, with your pointer finger. Always do this. Yeah, so always do that. Make sure that you're really pressing down on it. And that goes into the other one, which is do not go too hard. And I see technicians do this all the time where they're just going for it. And I don't know what the rationale is. I think it's just if I can get that tuning stability, you do not need to tune that hard. And so I wanted to show you how hard it is I would recommend starting out, and then how hard I do my test blows now. So just right here. Okay, so right here. Again, I'm using that technique where I'm using my middle finger and then my pointer finger bracing it. So if you're starting out, I would do it about today. So that's a good one. So that's a fairly firm blow, but you're not really attacking it. It's a firm blow, but no attack. You're not really attacking it. Today, I'll tune about like this. A soft blow. And again, that will take time, but none of those are really this. It's not that. So I would work on that. Don't think that the harder the test blow that you're just going to magically make it work. In fact, you're probably going to hurt yourself in the long run when you get to this treble section, because if you're pounding those, you're just not going to get them in sync. So that would be another one. If you haven't already, get yourself a Pabst Mute. This is a big one. And again, I went 10 years without having one of these. And instead I had the little, and these are fine, but I had the little rubber mute on the wire. And that's what I used in the meantime when I was doing ETD tuning. This one is a big do not. And I made this mistake for years until a customer actually complained to my wife, because my wife was the one answering calls. They did not want to have me back because I did this. I complained about how out of tune the piano was. That is a big one. Never complain to your customers about how long it's been, how badly out of tune, or how hard their piano is to tune. They will take it personally and you will lose that customer. I did it. So that's a big do not. This is the best piano you've ever gotten to tune, and it's just, oh, this is such a pleasure. Thank you, Mrs. Smith. I'm excited to work on your piano. Not, wow, this one's rough. Oh my gosh. How long is it? 20, 30? Oh yeah, it feels like, no, don't do it. I did it. I made that mistake, and you will lose customers. So just FYI. Posture. The posture goes in line with the stretching, but what we want to do is we want to keep that posture, and we want to use we're using our body. We're not going at it like this. I'm right now just kind of holding it. I see so many technicians do that. They're basically, if the piano is looking at you, they're doing this. And they're hurting, their core right here is just doing something rough. And so again, what you want is more, again, parallel to the piano keyboard, and you're getting this magic square. If I lift this up, that's what you're looking at, is this kind of square happening. And it's right here. So showing you as an example, again, I know we've talked about this, but we will really want to go and on tomorrow, see you guys in action. And so just really working on these fundamentals. Again, I'm parallel to it. I'm really hunched in with the piano, and I've spread my legs to lower myself because I'm about here, and I'd have to hunch down to do that. But because I'm squatting down just a little bit, but I've spread my legs a little wider. They're past my shoulders now, and that's giving me the right height. So this is literally what I look like. It's like this. So this whole muscle group is is active doing this, and you're not just using one little bit, and you're not using this weird core thing. You're using this whole upper and core, and so that's a big one. Make sure that posture's in place. Get a good hammer. And so I've been thinking more about this with folks that have tuning hammers and ones that are just really, this is actually, both of these are really good hammers. But as you get started, you'll notice that the hammers, a lot of times when you're starting out, you can't, you don't want to spend a lot of money. And what you lose is that connection. You lose two things. You lose the rigidity. So that is the stiffness in the hammer itself where it connects with the pin. There's a little bit of movement as you go in the cheaper hammers, but also there's a sloppiness to the pin. And not only does that damage the pin, you're not able to get as solid, not only a stable enough tuning, but a lot of times you're not even able to get it to where it needs to go without having to really bend the pin, which is a do not. This is really something that a lot of technicians struggle with early on, and that is flagpoling and bending that pin. I've seen some technicians, they really will be pulling this downward, and I've even heard of technicians breaking tuning pins. So I'm not saying that anybody's going to do that, but just be very mindful of it. If you look at my technique when I'm doing this, I am doing a little bit of pivoting of the pin. So I'm going 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then kind of at 11 o'clock, 10, 11 o'clock, and I'm just easing it into place, not bending it into place, just kind of easing it that direction. And that is more the proper technique as opposed to really going like this. And I see a lot of people do that. And I really recommend we don't get into that habit because the stability won't be there and you could really cause a lot of harm. Questions about any of these so far? Because I do see comments, but I wasn't sure if that's, yeah, sounds like. That's all right. So questions so far about any of these, because I can go back over them and talk about them. And because again, this is just stuff that I've learned over the years. And some of these are really important, especially the don't complain and I know that you're not complaining, but it's more of a, hey, this is a fact. It doesn't need to be said. Oh, you're all quiet today on a Wednesday.
Jill asked if you recommended a mid-level hammer versus like a $700, just like price ranges. That's a good question.
It's a great question. And I have an answer for you. And I'm going to get Mark to send me one. But it's the Supply 88 tuning hammer. And it is a very rigid tuning hammer. And my brother Adam, who's amazing tuner, swears by it. It's his hammer. So if you go to Supply 88, I believe they're like $350 or $350, and they're more affordable, and it's a great lever. And I'm actually having them make me one right now, and I'm getting it in the wood, the custom wood one. Really great tuning hammer. I know that Victor, I think that playing around with different tuning tips, and that can make a big difference. But I am curious to see what other people have paid for theirs as well, because yeah. And just so you know, we're going to be getting, now that we kind of know the platform and know what we're doing, we're going to be getting you more of this information and probably doing a video on maybe a half a dozen hammers and the different price points, what we like and what we don't like about them. And so but the Supply 88 tuning hammer, I've played around with it. It is super light. That is something that the yawn tuning hammers are not. These guys are, what do they call it? Full tang. So this is a solid piece of steel inside this. It's a steel core inside this tuning hammer. And I actually don't I like it how heavy it is because I'm so used to it. But the idea is that you can have this extendable tuning hammer. I've probably tuned 1.5 pianos over 20 years or whatever with it extended. Don't worry about getting an extendable hammer or not. That's just not a thing. And so, and if you notice that today's hammers, they're really not extendable. They're really lightweight and they're really, really rigid, which is great. I'm just not used to the lightweightness because this probably weighs as much as three of those hammers from Supply 88. They're ridiculously light. And the idea behind that is you have this pure connection to the pin itself. It's not being inhibited by weight in any way. So you're able to feel the pin and feel the bond there. And that's the reason and rationale behind such light tuning hammers. Rayburn tuning hammers, on pitch or 88 on pitch. That's Randy Sato's hammers. Mark Perney over at Supply 88. All these hammers are super lightweight. The Fujin, I think Stacy, you have a Fujin, right? And it's super lightweight. These carbon fiber.
It is lightweight.
So that's
I
kind
really
of
like it.
Yeah. And so I know that it's inevitable. I need to start getting used to one, and I'm getting a Supply 88 one. So that's one that you could look at. It's not that $700. I think I paid, okay, yeah, Jeff, that's great. You paid $350 for a Fujin. Am I saying that right? Fujin?
I've heard it all sorts.
I think it's Fuyan.
Fuyan, yeah, I've heard all three.
Fuyan. Oh man, I sound like such a noob. Fuyan.
I was sitting. We all have our own. It's like Caribbean. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Here's a big one, and because we have multiple technicians at Artisan, this was an early on one, and I feel like it went in a batch. Like 3 of them did this in a week, and it was rough. Do not scratch the piano benches. And what happened is the technicians had these new jeans. I think we even said, hey, everybody, we'll pay for you guys to get some new jeans. And they all went to this one place, and the jeans they got had like these metal buttons right there. And so they scratched the bench like crazy. And so just FYI, you can get those jeans, you get some rhinestones, that's fine, but just put something underneath you when you do it, because this happens and this is a big deal. Each one of those costs like $300 to get fixed. So we lost money, made the customer upset. Just be mindful of that. Put a little rag down, put something down on the bench if you're going to be using the bench. And then if you notice, all the Artisan aprons, we don't have pockets. We don't have pockets. We don't have metal on our aprons because of the same thing. When you're butting up against the piano, we don't want anything happening that there's some kind of scratching that can happen. That's just the things that we've found. And again, we try to be foolproof, not that our technicians are fools, just wanted we're handling everything. And so that's just a simple thing to keep in mind. Make sure that you're aware of any metal that's on your clothing that you could accidentally damage a piano. Just save yourself some money. And this goes into the next one. Buy your local touch-up artist, piano touch-up artist, a beer or a dinner, and get to know them, because they are going to be your best friend in a pinch. Find out who that is, who the piano stores are using. Find out who the local touch-up person is that fixes little scratches, dents, and dings, because this happens. Stacy, do you agree?
That is fantastic advice, because every person I've ever met has eventually come to a point where they scratch the polyester or the fallboard scratch. They didn't put it in correctly. So if you have a good polyester touch-up guy and a good refinisher, you want them on your side always. Yeah. Oh man, that was a good one. I really like that one. I'm the one that would usually have to call. I'm the one that would get the calls for the customers, right? When they're like, my piano got scratched. So yeah, it's a thing. It happens.
It's a thing. It
Yes.
absolutely happens.
Also, the
Um,
hardware when you take it off, when you like, don't just like lean it against the wall or right?
yeah.
Would you? Yeah. Sorry, I'll let
I
you.
never lean things against the wall if I can avoid it, because it's happened where either I or a kid knocks it over and it's bad. And so that's definitely a big one, is be aware of your surroundings and put things in the corner, but not leaning as much as you can. On that note, we've had this complaint, wipe the piano off when you're done. Have you had that one too, Stacy, where the customer calls like, what was the technician eating? A bunch of pizza or a bunch of chicken strips? It's so
Yes.
greasy. It's so
Fingerprints. It takes what, 4 minutes to just like, just, yep. Yes, this is real.
Don't get too hung up on a single note. That's a big don't, especially early on. I know you all, it's so easy to do. And so it's like, you'll wake up and like, okay, oh my gosh, I spent 5 minutes trying to get this unison in place. Keep it in your mind, C3, whatever it is, come back to it. Come back to it. Keep going. You're going to get yourself your own mental roadblock, and you will not be able to get done at that piano. And I can almost guarantee you every time, 99 out of 100 times, you're going to come back to that C3 and you're like, what was I worried about? This sounds pretty good. That's fine. So don't get hung up on one or two notes. Just keep moving. And then again, going back to that practicing, get through the piano in an hour. Just get it through and practice that. Give yourself only an hour and just see how far you get. And that goes into just don't get in your head, because that's a big one, is we get into our head as technicians. And the reality is we're going to hear things that most people will never hear. And it's good to have high standards. It's good to have that. But man, you can be your worst enemy. And I've done that, especially early on, where I'm just so critical of everything. This is a journey, and just know that it's going to take a while, but that's okay. And so just don't get your head, don't get worked up about it. And which I know is hard not to do, but just cut yourself some slack. This is a process, and have a good return policy. That's a big one. Robert, I think you've gone back to a couple different people, just kind of going back there. And that's good. That's why we at Artisan have our peace of mind guarantee. If you have any issues within 30 days, call us, we'll come out, no charge, see what's going on. And so that's a big do. Have yourself a good policy there, because what it does, and I didn't know this going into it, it's a psychological thing. Well, before we had that policy, people were like, okay, this is my one shot. If I don't point out this or this or this, and I'm not super anal and critical about it, I'm not going to see this guy for a year, and I'm going to have to live with it. Once we introduced this policy, everybody's like chill about it. They're like, oh yeah, if I notice anything, I'll give you a call. It just relaxed everything. And I had no idea that was going to happen. And so you have people like, well, if I have an issue, that's going to be fine. Go ahead, Janice.
Yeah, I got a question for you. When you make the appointment, do you ask them to maybe make a list of issues with it so that you can prioritize? You can look at the list and prioritize what you need to do before something else, so that they don't walk in the room halfway through your tuning and go, oh, by the way, and it's something you should have addressed at first. This is what we do in medical care. We ask them to come with a list of complaints so we can prioritize them. Do you do that in your piano tuning business as well?
Stacy, you can answer that.
Sure. Yeah. So usually if I get a customer on the phone, and especially if it's a new one, I ask, well, tell me about your piano. Are you having any other issues with it? And usually that's when they'll say, well, I have a key sticking, or my pedals squeaking. It's always those same things. Like they'll say either notes are sounding twangy, it's just really out of tune, sticky keys, squeaky pedals, those kind of things, or dampers, like it's ringing. They'll be like, it's ringing. So you'll get those a lot. And I usually try to put those in the notes for the tech so they know ahead of time. But I mean, if they sound like they're going to be like really meticulous, it's really good to have them go through the piano before. I mean, I haven't really
Yeah.
done this much, but like,
Yeah.
see if you have any, like, play through it. Cause see, the customer, when they, a lot of times, if they haven't tuned it for a long time, they might not have played it for a long time either.
Mhm.
And they don't know that they even have those issues till after it's tuned. Then they're like more sensitive to everything. So
Well,
I
that's
don't know.
why I was wondering, because that would give them the opportunity to put the list, you know, and between the time they make that phone call with you and the time the text shows up, that they could say, oh, I forgot, and put that on the list so you can prioritize your day.
I found, Janice, that a lot of times they do not know what they want until you get there and they've had a time to talk to little Jenny, and Jenny has a whole laundry list of stuff. So a lot of times it's just sticky notes galore. And so a lot of times you're like, okay, well, what is the most important thing? I can start with the tuning, and you just have to ask them. Somebody asked in the comments, is it a good idea to have the customer play it before leaving? Absolutely. And I'll do another one. And that is, don't put it together until you've asked that. I ran into an issue where I made the customer really upset because they said to the admin person after I left, he put it away. He put everything back together before I even had a chance to play it. And I didn't feel like I could actually critique anything because he had put it together. And I thought that was interesting. I never would have thought that. I was just kind of completing it and getting, I was fine to remove the case parts again. But they felt like, hey, you put it all together. It means that I was under pressure. I couldn't play it. I couldn't let you know. And so don't put it together until you've asked that question, would be my recommendations. Tool placement while working. Yes, screws, rooms are different. Do you have a routine? I'm fearful. Yes, at least something important in the pianos after I put it all back. What I typically do is a lot of times, to be honest, a lot of times you're not having to unscrew anything to get into the piano. If you notice here with this piano, I just had to pivot the little latches and the fallboard comes off. The only time I'm really having to remove screws if I'm removing like the key slip, if I'm removing other case parts, and in general, I'll screw those back into the key slip itself and put it to the side just so I can keep track of them. And they stay in the exact spot that they were meant to, because if you have a 100-year-old piano, those screws were not very well made. Those were more specific to that exact spot, and they don't really mix and match. So that's a great question. I usually will try to keep it inside of the piano itself on those case parts. And I do know that some people put like little boxes and stuff like that. That's a great idea as well. They also make these little magnetic cups. Have any of you seen these? Where there's like these magnetic cups and then you can drop the screw in it and it just holds it tight. And those are great. Joel, do you have one of those? You seem like a guy that would just have one. Just like, here's all the screws.
And when I have
Joel, he does have one. That's awesome. Those are great because they actually you want to felt the bottom of it, but you can stick that onto the piano plate. I think you can. I remember this one. I thought it was a plate, but maybe not. But yeah, that's the
screws on them.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So yep, the magnetic bolt, that's a home run. But just make sure that you felt the underneath side of it because you don't want that to scratch anything up. Do learn a song and learn how to play that one song. I played for last time. Just one. Mine isn't even a full song. It's a series of chord progressions, all white keys. You can play something better than that.
David, real quick, have you seen the action stack screw holder from Supply 88?
Yes, I have. Yes. You can. And Mark's so fun about that. He thinks they're just the most random, like, oh, that's brilliant. Of course I need that. I think he even has like little caps for the voicing tools that you can purchase. And so I should be getting our shipment, including the prototype of the Artisan multi-tool. So we'll be able to show you all that pretty soon. Pretty fun.
Can't wait for that.
I'm curious if anybody else has any do's and don'ts. Does anybody else have any do's and don'ts? I know that Jeff probably has some. He's probably like, oh man, I totally messed up, or I did something awesome. One of the two.
I got one that would be helpful. Don't, or first of all, don't say, I'm sorry, I broke a string. If a string broke, say a string broke. But even before that, say, sometimes strings break. And I don't always tell them that, but I usually do it with really old pianos. But I've had newer pianos that all of a sudden, bam, they pop and I'm like, oh shoot, I didn't tell them it might break. And if I don't say it, I feel like it's my responsibility to fix that for them, no charge. If I say it, then they're more likely to be like, okay, because I tell them the string breaks, it's a little fee, and well, it's not always a little fee, but sometimes it is. But you can, if it's a fee, and we'll fix it for you. So, anyways,
Yeah, that's an amazing tip, and you're absolutely right. Setting the expectations before you get started, and then, a string broke. That's so true. And early on, I was so like embarrassed. I thought it was my fault, and so I would every time like, I broke a string. I'm sorry. No, the strings break.
It's so startling too, because it's like bam,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh my gosh, it broke, and your adrenaline's going, and you're like, I'm so sorry, but just,
Oh, that's a great one. That is a good one. Stacey, do you have any do's or don'ts of things that you've noticed over the years?
Joel had a good one. He said, don't ever say you can do something you haven't practiced or mastered. Oh yeah, I can restring this piano, and you haven't ever. I don't know.
That's a good one. Yes.
And can I say, watch your language when that spring breaks, because you are scared? Watch what your language is, okay?
Absolutely. That's a good point. Yeah, because it is terrifying. Because it usually happens on ones for me that I did not expect it. And that's the thing that happens with me. I don't know about you, Jeff, but when I'm at a piano, I'm like, oh, I'm going to pop a string. I just know it. Usually I don't. And then all of a sudden I'm working on a 70s Yamaha, and all of a sudden a string breaks. I'm like, what? It's just crazy.
I have one.
All
so
right.
I would say you've nenever done this, or techs have never done this, but I've worked with a lot of techs, and some of them will actually argue with the customer. Do you know what I mean? Like they'll call, like, let's say for a warranty. Let's say they call for a warranty, and that's why I love our peace of mind guarantee. We'll just go out and take a look at it. But some are like, well, that the tuning wouldn't have caused that. I mean, they'll just flat out, that's just not, it's not a good strategy. It's not going to go over well. It never goes over well. And I've seen a couple of techs arguing with their customers, and I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, stop, give me the phone. It's like, unfortunately, customers do believe that it's hard to, you don't want to tell them they're wrong, but they will think that a sticky key is caused by the tuning. They will. Yeah. I don't know. It's just a thing. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, you can explain why when you get out there, like what caused it, but you can't, just don't flat out be like, no, no, you're wrong. I don't know. That would be like a big one for me, I would think.
So there's a question, are safety glasses necessary in case of broken strings? I like wearing safety glasses if I'm replacing a string, because I'm like threading it and snapping it. But I've never heard of an instant where somebody got snapped. I'm terrified every time, but I don't think it ever really happens. It's kind of like one of those things. It's like, I just don't think it really happens. So I wear glasses to my appointments, so I'm not really I'm not really too scared about it. But even when I wasn't wearing glasses, I've never come close to anything happening like that. Because in general, what happens is, it's not like a rubber band and that like it snaps on one end and it's going to whip you. it just loses tension all of a sudden. But I did have the one thing where a string shot out, and ever since then I've been nervous, but I've never, aside from that one instance, had anything. I know that they make these nicer like safety glasses that look like glasses. And I've heard of people kind of wearing those now to appointments and stuff like that. But I think the risk is so minimal. I think it's so minimal. I don't know. Jeff, have you ever, what about you, Victor?
Oh, I was going to say one thing, but I can wait.
No, go for it.
Okay, there's so for cutting wires, I don't know if you have I think it's a Xuron piano clipper, and it actually like will clamp onto it while it's cutting, so it holds the two ends after you cut them, and it won't fly off. Because I've had problems with that, like stuff goes flying off.
Oh.
So
if you're able to
Xuron,
find that on Google and just like post the link, that's always helpful. Because I've never seen something like that. I've just
I had to
kind of
hunt for it.
pull things as best I can and trying to make sure it doesn't shoot out.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it and I'll post it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So are we going to have any takers tomorrow? Are we going to have any takers tomorrow on some tuning technique? Johnny's smiling. Robert, yes.
Yeah.
I'll have my piano. Victor, I'm looking at you, brother.
Yeah, I'll try. I'll take I'll walk over to the piano. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we're just going to be working on technique, posture, all that stuff. Okay, there it is. I'm so curious.
I think Robert was going to do it too. Were you going to do it, Robert?
He raised his hand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you did. Yeah. And Bruce, I think, said he would do it. So
Joel, no. All hammers are welcome. I'm gonna show you my cheapest hammer. I'll be right back.
Oh, I thought of another one, you guys. If you're gonna have an added additional cost at the service, if you need to charge more, just tell them ahead of time. Always okay the price ahead of time. Like, oh, I need to do this. It's gonna cost this much more. I like let them know ahead of time so they feel like they had a choice at least, and they're not like blindsided. Because yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. I'll say one thing. I forgot one time a customer bass strings popped, and I told her the price on the phone. I didn't mention that it was gonna be the cost hourly plus the actual cost of the bass strings. And so I was like, oh, it's gonna be $25 for a bass string. But I was like, if we order a duplicate, the exact one, it's gonna be a little more expensive because the shipping and everything. And so I was like, in that case, it's gonna be more like $30 a string, $35. And so she thought that to install it, it was just gonna be, two strings, so $60 or whatever it was. And so when I replaced them, I was like, all right, that's gonna be, it was like 200 something. And she's like, I thought you said it was gonna be 60. And I was like, well, that's actually my bad. I did not say that it was gonna be the cost, the materials plus the service. So yeah, thankfully she understood, but I could see other people getting pretty upset.
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, here's the hammers.
This guy is so adorable. I love this little guy. And it's a little extender. It goes down to this. It's nice in a little pinch. So this one is antique. This is probably turn of the century right here. And what you'll notice is the heaviness in these. Both these ones are more antiques. I think this one is from the 20s. This is from the turn of the century, and you notice kind of just the look of it. This is one that you'll kind of see on Amazon. This is very typical. Again, one of the best tuners I've ever met. This is like a $25 hammer. He used it. He swore by it. And he just loved this hammer. And he was like the best tuner I've ever met. So it kind of just goes to show that that you learn your tools and you just learn to it becomes a part of you. So again, I use, and what we've issued everybody here at Artisan are the yawn tuning hammer, which I guess they're bringing back, Victor said, at Schaff. I think these are like $400. So that's a great hammer. we customize them by moving the heads, and I think we did that with Bruce. And then we file everything down a little bit to give it the exact feel. But the reality is what you really lose with some of these old hammers is that tuning pin stiffness. It's like they don't grip the pen very well. And I'm going to show you how loose they are, because it's kind of ridiculous. And again, I learned on one of those, they call them apprentice tuning hammers. And that's the apprentice hammers are these right here, called an apprentice hammer. And maybe I'll go for the oldest. So this one, again, turn of the century. And you can see here, this is crazy. I probably have like a 3-inch radius that I can do, and it's on the pin. So like, this is what our forefathers used. Today's apprentice hammer, here we go right here. We've kind of, I would say there's about 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch of round play. So that is, I can move it in a circle. The baby, let's see how this one does. Yeah, that one's more like 1 inch. That one's pretty big. Then the yawn right here, 1/4 inch maybe. And so, and this is another yawn tuning hammer. This one's a lighter version. Same. So it kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking for, but a lot of it is just kind of what feels right. And I don't know, it's fun when you're looking at these hammers, because it feels like you're going into like Alavander's wand shop, and it's like the wand chooses you, like in Harry Potter kind of a deal. And so it's kind of like that. But it is nice to at least have some ideas of, okay, what are you looking for? What's one of the ones that are recommended? Because sometimes it's nice if you don't have a good hammer, because you're going to always second guess. You're like, is it me or is it this hammer? So what I had to do is eventually get a higher end hammer. That way I could cross that off the list. Okay, it's not the hammer. This is a very popular hammer. It's well made. It's well regarded. So I need to shore up some of my skills. And that's kind of that's the reasoning I did with upgrading my hammer. Yeah. I love that word, Joel, by the way, janky. It's like one of my favorites.
I've got a
Janky.
81 Kimball's console piano. Pin block, the pins towards the top of the pin block are really super loose, and the middle ones are really super tight. Because pin block is shallow and it's narrow, and
yeah. So Janice, I get that. Don't want to have to go through 5 hammers to find the right one. That's why they used to, at these guild events, they used to have these. Well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, they used to have these conventions where they would have all the tool manufacturers and you can really play it. That's kind of starting to come back, where you can try the hammers at these conventions. But just so you know, if you go to your local guild, is there a local PTG guild around you, Janice?
I have tried to contact them and had no success with getting them. The guild here covers Arizona, California, and Sonora, Mexico. So I have not had any success in actually making contact with them. All I have is an email address, and I'm not getting through. So
I'm sorry, that's not supposed to be the case.
Well, and that influences whether I'm going to bother even becoming a member of the guild if there's no benefit in my area. Although they did have something down in Phoenix a couple weekends ago. I think Justin went. I was unable to attend it, but I have tried contacting them and gotten nowhere.
The guild, the monthly meetings are a good time. I know the Phoenix one is a really popular one. But you would be able to say, hey, I'm new to this, and I want to know what you all think about your tuning hammers. They will all just like get super excited, and you'll just see like, oh, try this one, try this one. It's kind of a fun thing, and so you'll be able to try them.
Does anybody have a better email for them than going through their website? Because if they've got one down in Phoenix, I can drive down to Phoenix, but if I can't get any information on when it is, where it is, or anything else, then
Let me contact Mark Perney over at Supply 88. Stacey, do you have something to add?
I also know Elliot is the president
Yeah.
of the guild in your area, so I can give you his personal phone number if you want, Janice.
Yep, get a hold of Elliot.
I love personal phone numbers. Oh,
I'm gonna give that to you. Just be like,
spam
hey,
him.
yes.
Well, I know the guild wants to, they really want to help people out, and we want to do what we can for the guild and trying to make that happen. So tomorrow, 4:00, we're going to work on the tuning posture technique. So be sure to bring your questions. If you're in front of a piano and can do that, that's always so good, and really be able to get some good feedback. A lot of times we're not going to be able to probably hear what you're doing because of the phone microphones. So the best chance would be if you're in the mid range usually. But even then, we'll still be able to kind of work on posture and technique, working on the right pulling and pull. By the way, we got like this comment from somebody who's a student, and they were curious. They said, "Hey, I saw one of the videos where David he breaks the tuning down and then pulls it up." And they said I broke it down like a half step, and I'm like, no, not that much. I didn't. Hopefully, I didn't communicate that. If I did, I'm sorry. It's not that much. So let's just do this one. So what I do is a very quick. I'm going through it. It's just one little click low, a click low, and then I bring it back up, and it just helps me hear it. It helps break the tension and bring it back up. But I'm not, I'm not going like that. And again, noticing that technique, going like that. So that's what we're going to be working on. If we had an upright and grand piano, that's always really awesome. So we'll see what everybody has, but it'll be good. Awesome. I'm so curious what your Benjamin says. I'll be in the food trucks slinging groceries. I love it. Stacy, are you able to post the link to this group's specific Facebook page?
Yes, I will do that.
So this will be good for all of you all to like and join, just because this is going to be the start of, at least right now while we're kind of getting things together, where you're going to go to kind of get more announcements. You can ask questions and things of that nature. And that's where, another place for these links to be. And
I'll make sure it's in the next newsletter too. Yeah. And if you didn't get the newsletter, just email me or text me, because I text all of you from my phone. So I'll have my number. So I am so excited for tomorrow to see the tuning. I love that. I've never seen anybody really do that, where you do like a live platform where people are doing a group tuning session. So I'm really excited to see that. And that'll be fun to kind of, everybody kind of does their thing. So I'll get to sit back and just judge you all. I love it. I'm playing. Any more questions before we sign off? Yes, Robert.
I have one quick question, and I think I emailed Stacy. As far as do's and don'ts, do you feel obligated to tune every pin at every tuning? Because I found some where it's like, this note's good, and I'm gonna need to just kind of stretch some of the upper notes or even lower some of the lower range, and I haven't found where I need to just put the hammer on every single pin every single time.
100%, Robert. Early on, I was like, oh, are they getting their money's worth if I don't? No. Just if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's my motto. And guess what? I've gone to pianos where I'm like, wow, it was almost all in tune. So the rest of the service call, after 15 minutes, I tuned it, and then I spent the next hour touching up the regulation, cleaning it up more, doing other things. And then I let the customer know, like, wow, actually that held really well. So it gave me time to do this other work. And they're just like, great. That's so, usually people are not unhappy to hear that they have a healthy piano and that it's holding up well. And so what you can do is spend that other time showing them, hey, I did all this other stuff. So guess what? In a year, even if it doesn't need tuning, you're going to recommend, I was able to do this other stuff. Next time, if it doesn't need as much tuning, I can do this other stuff as well. Is, you know, the next level. Because
She was happy, and I got my first paycheck, which was a dozen eggs from her chicken coop.
A professional piano tuner you are.
So she talked me into
it. Barter's the way to go.
Oh, that's great. I remember, I wish I would have kept my first, it actually was cash. I got paid first in cash. I remember that. And I was like, do I save it? I'm like, no, I need to eat. Humidity. Yes. Let me grab something for you. Hold on just a second.
Like the humidifiers or the dryer or, you know.
Yeah, the damp chasers and the.
Yeah.
You should carry one of these on your person. These are on Amazon. They're like $5 a piece, and they're really tiny and small. And they gives you an idea of what the humidity level is at. Can anybody tell me what the ideal humidity for pianos is? The relative humidity?
Isn't it 40%?
Yeah, if you're up around 50, they actually can say 40 to 60%.
Okay.
And so, okay, and I know I have to remember this is different from in general, in the winter months, does the piano go flat or sharp? And why?
Well, it dries out more in the winter.
Hey, that's right. I don't know why. That was the hardest concept for me early on to realize. I'm like, but the winter, it's snowy out. That's moisture. You're right.
But not in the air.
The pitch will lower in the winter and raise and swell up in the summer times. And so what I'm always telling customers is to keep one of these handy. I show them the link, because especially with customers that have me come back sometimes multiple times, these are your best friend, especially while you're there. If you're like, because your body will know, I'm like, ooh, something feels off in this space. Feels too moist, or is that too moist? It's too humid or too dry. And pulling one of these out and say, hey, I was able to tune it, but just so you know, the humidity in this is 80, because I literally had this happen. This person had like 24 fish tanks right around the piano. They're like a fish tank person. And it just was like, it was so humid in that room. And then other times where it's just so dry.
Also, it could be if the piano is too close to the kitchen and there's boiling water and such, so that piano is going through all those fluctuations with the cooking cycle.
I've had some where I go to the piano and there's something gooey on it. And it's the grease from people. It's like, making Chinese food. And it just is close enough that it was getting on it. I was like, wow, that's a lot of Chinese food grease on your piano. That's funny. All right. So tomorrow, find a piano, get yourself a phone, whatever. What do they call them? A little tripod of some kind, or just tape it to the side of a broom and stick it in somewhere. Well, we're going to work on tuning together, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see if we can get a couple pianos in there, and we'll just kind of all work together. I'll have my piano set up too, so that we can kind of work off of that. And then if anybody has a grand piano, it would be awesome, because we can talk about this actual how I hold the tuning hammer on grand pianos. So we'll do that. Thank you for joining. I'm going to get some food, and I will see you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank y'all.